Hey guys, it's so funny. We've been chatting for like 15 minutes and we're like, we should probably turn the microphone on. Jeff and Tasha, welcome to the podcast.
Thank
Good to be
you.
here,
Nice to be
Sonia.
here.
And
Nice to see you again.
Jeff is a welcome back. Yeah, and I'm so excited about my new friend
Mm.
Tasha.
Yeah.
I wanted to just dive straight in today because I was listening. You guys have a podcast that is it the Mind Bod Adventure podcast? Yes, I got it right.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I'm very excited about. I'm probably your new biggest fan. There's a quote that Jeff said, and I wrote it down. I'm like, this is brilliant. And then I want you to comment on it. It's, you don't know that you're allowed to be as you are until you notice who you are.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the big projects. One of the big projects, of any kind of deep practice is to actually see who's operating under the surface, because you inherit all these assumptions and ideals of how you think a human should be. And they end up looming large in your conditioning through your family of origin, your culture, and yet there's always a discrepancy between the things that are put on you and the real things that are welling up inside you, the passions, the interests, in my case, the neurodivergent proclivities, the weird quirks of wiring. So, and this, I feel like this is a conversation that's about both practice and about both the kind of neurodiversity movement. And that movement is very much about saying, hey, wait a second, these are the ways we think we're supposed to be, but these are the ways we actually are. And that difference creates a lot of suffering and a lot of challenge. So if we can begin to look and notice how we are, then we can begin to flow into life, into our practice, into our activities with more seamlessness, more joy, and we can begin to articulate that to other people so that that can sort of come online as well. And that is not a trivial thing. That is another way to talk about life meaning. It's another way to talk about being successful in life. And I think a lot of us figure this out on our own. We meet goals that are set by the external world, but in order to make them fulfilling, they have to fit with the basic raw material of who we are. And that's a lifelong project. You don't because you don't know how you are unless you have some way to kind of get outside of how you are and to get perspective on it. So to hear other people talk about this, to hear other people's insights of where they're having challenges, where they're not, it kind of it's like it shoots dye into your invisible experience. You can suddenly see the patterns that you've been in. You're nodding, it sounds like, Sonia, so this sounds familiar to you.
Yeah,
It's the process.
and yeah, and like I also wanted to talk to Tosh about this through like being a musician. My background is I'm sort of transitioning, but I've been like a professional mountain biker for 20 years. I do these like super long endurance rides, and that's been my doorway to self-inquiry. And a lot of people can use these things as a distraction or as an avoidance tactic. But for me, it's like, this is how I figure out who I am and what I'm made of. And it's an amazing like mindfulness practice that I didn't even realize was mindfulness until I started being like, oh, whenever I'm doing this, I'm literally like coming back every single time, and I'm gaining so much awareness and insight into these practices. But the thing that you said, Jeff, is you said the way that we should be. And I did this like whole series about the shoulds. Like there are certain things that society demands of people to be a certain way, and people feel inclined to meet those demands even though it doesn't match with who they are. And then they're miserable because of it. But there's also the fear of like, well, what if I can't make it work if I'm a certain way? Can you guys both speak to that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that happens is we encounter those shoulds before, like Jeff was saying, we ever actually kind of get to know ourselves, right? And so much of that friction between this external should and it really not landing in your own nervous system is like, you don't really, we don't really know yet what it is that I want, and it's like this, no matter what practice it is, whether it's, meditation like Jeff and I are into, or mountain biking, or music like I used to do, there's this like process of kind of excavating and understanding who you are at this time. It's always changing. But in getting to know that, it becomes easier to kind of stand your ground or navigate these external pressures. You get to, and I think that's kind of what happens as you get older and you grow more mature. but it's available all the time. It's like, if I deeply know something about myself, it's so much easier just to say, no, that's a norm that I'm just not interested in, conforming to. Or yes, this one is, I'm not going to fight that fight. This one is okay. But it's kind of like you start to negotiate with the outside world in a way that doesn't feel so abrasive or scary, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love that, and I'm thinking about this sort of like these two poles. On the one hand is the pole of like your culture, your sport sets a standard, whatever it is, and there's something awesome about not only trying to meet that standard, but beat that standard to, to that you're in this sort of field of competition with other human beings, and there is a kind of ideal that you're striving for, and I think that over time, what happens is you begin to realize that the person striving for that ideal is more interesting even than you realized. And there's a way in which you could meet that ideal that maybe looks different than the way other people do. And I'll just give you a personal example from, as a creative, as someone who's I mean, I make my living as a meditation teacher and a writer. I had this ideal. I knew I wanted to be a writer, and to be a writer is to be at a certain level of being able to communicate and be able to write well and all those things. And you could say that's the universal standard anybody who wants to, pursue that as an art is going to need. But I thought what that looked like when I was younger was writing giant, complicated. I was a journalist, so I thought it was like writing giant, complicated nonfiction books, writing the definitive take on something. And I wrote one book like that. I don't know how I fucking did that because it was like 500-page book with footnotes on consciousness. Like now with my ADHD, I'm like, how did I do that? But it was
Hyperfocus.
hyper focused. So I'm glad I aimed for that, but there was so much suffering involved. There was so much suffering involved after when I was trying to reproduce that. And at a certain point, I realized, wait, I'm not wired for this kind of thing. I'm wired for something else. I can still be a writer, but now it's like I'm going to write much shorter pieces. I'm going to discover this medium called the guided practice or the guided meditation. I'm going to make it my own. I'm going to own my voice in this. Like I'm going to, I'm going to calibrate I'm going to rather, I'm going to align my natural capacities with the external expression or the form of that thing. And I had no clue what that even looked like when I was younger. Like that was a process of discovery. And since I've done that, I'm so much more fulfilled in my creativity and my work because it's just like, it's this sort of effortless output as opposed to like grinding against grinding my gears against and chafing against the kinds of things that were just not my natural competencies. And it's just a useless waste of energy because you can be twice as fulfilled and do twice as well in life still play to your strengths.
Yeah, and that mirrors almost exactly my experience in the music industry too. It's just like, slowly learning what it is that you're actually trying to get or how it actually feeds you rather than, conforming to what an industry kind of tells you you're supposed to get out of it.
I'm hearing just so much creativity in this. Like you have to be creative in order to figure out how do I express myself most uniquely so that it's me? And then how do I find a way to make it work for me that might be different than how like the world tells you to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would even reframe that. It's not that you have to be creative. It's that like, creativity is what comes out when
Yeah.
you let yourself discover it,
You
like
are creativity.
you are creativity, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's these constraints, the constraints that we put on ourselves, that industries put on us, that competition puts on us. That you start to creativity has this element of joy in it. It's like
Yeah.
joyful, it's flowful, it's everyone else in the world could disappear and you're still doing this thing and it feels great. And what erodes that joy is like, these constraints we're talking about, like either from our own selves, perfectionism, or from a sport or an industry. I think for me, I was a music producer and a performer for like 15 years. And I really loved it. I'm still a musician and I do a lot of mentorship in the industry and still like, play my own music. But what really just drove all of the joy out of it was these external structures. There's awards you're trying to win, there's magazines you're trying to get in, there's it's really an entire world full of just like pissing contests, and like dog eat dog. And it just swallows whole the joy. And in a creative industry, that's the death rattle, right? Like if it's not joyful to create, there's no more creativity. So I found myself at this place where like writing a song felt like pulling teeth, because I would sit down and I'm not having fun. I don't know what I want to write about. All I can hear is all these other voices, what I should be doing, how I should be showing up. And at a certain point, I was like, whatever I came here for is broken. Like, it's time to hit the reset button and really discover like creativity again, joy, playfulness again. And that might be in music, but it might be in other things, and it really did kind of emerge in other things like meditation practice and community work and stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think of creativity so much as like uh, how do I put this? Like the classic creative arts, the things that you do that are quote that the culture considers creative. I think it's more like, and this is where practice is so incredible, especially a meditation practice. It's more like when you get out of your own way, um,
Mm,
what naturally happens is creativity. And sometimes that's expressed through an art or the classic creative forms. Sometimes that's just expressed in the way you're living your life. It's expressed in the way, if you're an athlete, in the way you're, when you're really out of your own way, what natural movements want to come through? What does the body know all on its own? What is your
mm,
intuition telling you kind of moment to moment? Like all of that's creativity. And that is, in a way, this is the kind of deep aspect of a spiritual practice or a meditation practice is about removing what's in the way of that, and helping so that be it's you could think of it as like, what is the point of all of this? It's the point of all this is to be in the flow of where life wants to take the unique version of you and the unique version of reality that's presenting itself. It wants to there just wants to be a natural unfolding and a natural flow. And what we're doing all the time is like holding back little bits we don't like and grabbing this and trying to negotiate this and fighting with this and friction with this. And all of that is just like this car careening off the road,
mm.
screeching with all of its gears, winding against each other. Like, it's like in a tight canyon against the rocks. It's like, "Eh." But it should just be like, you know, how do you get that open feel, that open space? And it has so much to do with the inner work you do on yourself. And just
Mhm.
like you're saying, through the practice of mountain biking, just as any example, you are in that learning. You have to be in that learning if you want to excel at your sport. You have to be interested in like, well, where are the places where I'm fighting against myself? Where are the chafing points? And you learn it intuitively how to begin to soften here and tighten here. And then what happens is there are constraints that can be very valuable. They're like it's like the difference between dancing with no form. You're just a blob. We've all seen people dancing like this. You're
Flippy
just flowing all
dancing.
over the place. It's just too hippie versus like tight. You got some like flamenco. Ruh, ruh. You got some like, now you have something to move with and the energy can burst and flow. And so you want some constraint to give the creativity form. And that can be the competitive constraints of your industry or your whatever it is. But if there's too many, then it's just going to shut the whole thing down.
I said, blippy, not hippie, because I think about how my son walks, it's like, "Meh," like blippy walk. Yeah, there's so much good stuff here. Like, Tasha, when you were talking, it's like you were describing my experience. That's why I don't know how to talk about, am I still a pro mountain biker or not? Because I got so fed up with all the crap. Like, I just want to ride my bike and have fun. And it's like, oh, you got to get the sponsors and you got to like write your value proposition. And then nobody cares anyway. And it's just some stupid popularity contest. And all people care about are like these dumb external metrics that don't even mean anything, that don't even move the needle in any way. And you're giving up so much in order to do this. And so
100%.
yeah, and it's like I was racing all over the world doing all these things, and like I had kids, which helped me have some time and perspective because it was the pandemic. But then going back to it, it's like, what am I even doing this? And you know, and not having the support actually anymore because nobody wants to support a mom, which is really annoying. And so, yeah, it's like the same question. So I'm curious, how do you describe yourself? Because like I still race. Like I just did a race like a week ago, and I raced in the pro category, and I came second. I'm still a pro, but like I don't live like a
Congrats. That's nice.
well,
Yeah.
but I don't live like a pro. Like I train like 3 to 6 hours a week. Like the contents of my mind are not around mountain biking at all, and it feels like this old life. But I still like to dabble in it.
This is almost exactly what my life was like, probably like around 2017 through 2020. Like the kind of peak of my career was 2016, 2017. I like was nominated for a Juno Award and I won a Much Music Video Award, and it was like winning awards all over the world. And I did like 2 world tours and 20 music videos. And like externally, it looked like I was winning all the things I had set out to win, and in a way I was, but internally I was the misfit between me and what life looked like that was so strong. I was every single spare second that I had, I was running off to a meditation retreat. I was just like unfindable to everyone in the universe. Like I was really spending about like 6 months a year in retreat and then just bouncing out only to film things, record what I had to. And so same as you, mentally, I was like, I don't even know, can I call myself a professional musician? I'm like, as far as I'm concerned, I'm just a yogi. Like I'm just doing weird meditation stuff. Please leave me alone if you can. And that tension itself, I think we want to solve it right away because
Yeah,
we want to define it and solve it
because
and
it's
be like, okay,
uncomfortable.
it's so uncomfortable. And the idea that discomfort might go on for a couple years is, I remember to myself, I was like, this has to get solved by like Sunday. Let's make it happen. Right. And really what happened, it was just like I kept living like that, following my gut moment to moment, and my life kind of sorted itself out. I was just because I was making myself less available for certain kinds of events and stuff, and there was then I decided, well, maybe I don't really want this part of my team, and I let them go. And there's like just this like organic reshuffling that happened. And then, I mean, this worked for me, but pandemic came literally the week that I was setting out on tour, and I remember saying like, I don't know how, but please world, I can't go on this tour. I don't want to. And then the entire world shut down. And my business partner was like, you made this happen. You asked for this. But, it was this perfect severance where I could just sit with myself and be like, okay, how do I want to return? How do I want to, you know, not rebrand is the wrong word, but like if I'm going to be more authentic day by day, what does that look like? And so things were just shedding, the music industry in me was just shedding, and the other things were kind of, there was like a waxing and waning that was happening with stuff. And so now, like I said, this was almost 10 years ago. So now I feel kind of like, cool, I get what I'm doing, and it's not music industry anymore. But for about a good 7 years, when people asked me what I did, I was like, please don't ask. I don't know. Very confused.
Yeah, because you don't know who you're turning into. That's the
Exactly. Yeah.
thing. You think it's about you have an idea of who you want to become and you're aiming for it. And maybe sometimes that goes down for people. It's possible, I'm sure. But I think what happens more often is you have an ideal of something you want to get done or what you're aiming for. And there, in the meantime, there's this process of self-discovery happening. At a certain
Yeah.
point, you realize you're not the person you thought you were, but yet you're the kind of goal structure and all that stuff. It's like it's now obsolete, but you don't have a new one yet, and so you have to kind of, I don't know. I feel like there's no way around the learning of this. There's no way around the
Yeah.
the kind of bottom falling out, and you just got to kind of, you got to flounder a bit. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
and
the thing that happens too is like, that bottom falls out and you kind of don't know who you are and you flounder for a bit. And then you get this new thing and you're like, oh, this is the new bot. This is who I am. Yay, I figured it out.
oh yeah,
And then that's going to fall out again too.
exactly.
And it does, like, I've had like 4 careers in my life. I was like a pop star doing dance. I was like a rapper. Like now I'm a Tibetan Buddhist Lama, and I don't know, I have a YouTube channel about plants, and like so
Yes,
I've kind of
plants.
gotten to this
Hey.
point where I'm not even trying to kid myself that there is a bot. Like, I'm like, whatever I'm calling myself right now, it is completely temporary, and that actually feels very good. That I
Well,
don't want to put
that
a label
totally
on it.
aligns with your deep practice too. That aligns with being a Tibetan Lama, because that is about the understanding of the groundlessness of things and being okay with that. I mean, the classic story is like the good news, bad news. Like,
Yeah.
sorry, the bad news is you're falling off a cliff and you don't have a parachute. The good news is there's no bottom. So it's like,
So
okay, you got to just learn to like
we
freestyle. You got to learn to like, do the synchro swim moves in midair. Yeah,
And I think, where
100%.
the mindfulness piece comes in is like the tolerance of that uncertainty of not needing to know,
unquestionably.
and the acceptance of what's happening and who you are. It's hard to, it sounds simple, but not. That's been the biggest help for me, is that like I actually don't want to know, People are like, "Oh, like,
Yeah.
what's your 5-year goal?" I'm like, "I don't have a 5-year goal."
Huh.
Or like, "What's the mountain you're climbing?" I'm like, It doesn't matter." Like, because I know I'm gonna get to a mountaintop and it literally won't matter.
Yeah.
Mm. What about I mean, I think about this a lot, and I feel like there's a place for having goals professionally for sure and creatively. But I've found the most productive goals or intentions are more about how I want to show up. Like the project I'm interested in is in the project of finally living my deep values, which is
Mm.
a process. And so it's like, I don't know where I'll be exactly, but I know how I want to be in it. I know I want to be, present and resilient and loving and oh, whatever those things are, strong. And so those are the like I have, and so I have in any moment, whatever the challenge is, it's like, is there a way to meet this challenge that I may not want, that is deepening the kind of person that I want to become?
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Versus like, I'm going to be in this challenge and I'm just going to complain about it, or I'm just going to fight against it, or I'm going to do whatever. Like, it's like, no, how can I be in it where the way I show up for it is the training I want?
Yeah, and I've stopped calling them goals, really. Like to me, anything that I don't know, moving towards is an aspiration, right? It's like, and so then that encapsulates kind of like the things that Jeff's talking about, which is like I aspire to be person of certain qualities, and I have I want to be kind, and I want to be like inclusive, and I want to be vital, and alive, and creative, and all these things, and I want to be helpful, and so but rather than it being a goal, because you get there, like how do I
Yeah,
perfect being kind, right? It's just
yeah.
every day I wake up and I aspire to do it a little bit better than I did yesterday, or just the best that I can in these 24 hours, right? So it's like a new set of aspirations every day, or it looks a bit
It's a
different.
cultivation.
Yeah.
It's a training. You're cultivating these.
I'm literally vibrating in my chair, trying not to interrupt, because
Sorry.
I signed a book deal with a publisher like a month ago. Um,
Congratulations.
the book is exactly what we're talking about. It's about how do you strive in ways that support your sense of significance so that you're cultivating who you are and how you are connected to other people. So it's about like how do we strive for goals to support our self-worth, for lack of a better word, how we matter to ourselves, and how do we also strive in ways that cultivate our social worth, but not in an extrinsic, gross way, but like so we have great connections with people and we feel like we're contributing, we feel like we're, letting other people contribute to us. That is essentially how it helps us feel like we matter. And how do we have perspective on our striving so that we can do that? Because there is no finish line. There is no goal outcome that's going to make you feel whole. It's how you show up and how you know yourself every single day. And I think the biggest problem in our culture, even when you think about it in this way, is it's still just so self focused. How do I be my best, and how
Yeah.
do I live by my values? And those are important, but we live with other people, and it's about connection and also even transcendence through striving for these goals. So I've just been so excited listening to this because like I have like the structure of my book, and you guys are like hitting every single thing. I'm like, I think I'm on the right track.
For sure. And it's like this is the kind of thing where like you discover it by kind of making these mistakes, Like I think
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm sure someone in my 20s told me like, it's about process, not about finish line, and it's about like, aspiration and cultivation, and not about goals, and it's about community, and it's not about yourself. And I was probably like, sounds good. I'm going to go get famous now by myself. Goodbye,
Bye. Yeah.
But I don't, there was like 10 good years of like big achievements that all felt really hollow, even though everyone outside me was like, huge win, amazing win. And to me, I was like, oh, I guess I better set a new goal, because that one didn't feel like the way I wanted, the completion of a goal to feel. So you're always chasing that, and always kind of like self-contained in my success. And I guess there's some people who don't need to learn from their own mistakes and just figure it out right away. But I certainly, I certainly needed to learn from my own mistakes.
Oh my gosh, there's so many places I want to take this, and I can't believe I'm already looking at the time. Whenever I reached out to you, I wanted to talk about there's a lot of people who are like meditation practices on apps has become wildly popular, which is fantastic. I'll say a few different things and then I'll be quiet. Number one, I had a coaching client, and they were so excited about their meditation app streak. Like, oh, I got like
Mm.
500 whatever days. And it's like, that's wonderful. But they weren't actually meditating. They were just like turning it on to get the check mark. And I had to have them break the streak because they were doing it for the check mark. And that speaks to so many things we've already talked about today. And then there's people that I feel like I'm being a jerk but like I'm trying to just pull out the problem. There are people who will meditate, but they'll just like put on their Bose headphones and fall asleep. It's like a lullaby. And there's people who, I just feel bad because I'm feeling so critical, but I just want to bring the problem up. People who will understand, they'll know what the meditation is doing. They know they're doing it, but then in real life, they have no idea how to practice it, because there's a difference between like sitting on your cushion listening, but then going into the real world and actually doing it in real life. So like, I guess my first question is, the meditation apps are so helpful. They've helped me a lot, but they also can be very unhelpful. So can you comment to the apps and how people can best use them? And then second, how people can practice meditation in real life?
I have
Well,
thoughts.
I have so many. This is a can of worms, but a good can of worms. So first of all, I think all of the kind of tendencies you're pointing out, like it's not being critical. These are things that we've all done. I've definitely logged into an app of some kind just for a check mark and been like, I don't know if this is really what this is for. Like these are all things that everybody does in practice. But I think you're all the things that you're pointing to all have different kind of manifestations or like kind of reasons why. And let's talk for a second about the like inability to take it from the cushion out into life or like practice in real life. And I think one of the things is there's nothing special about sitting on a cushion and doing the meditation or whatever. We call it practice because it's just a kind of, I don't know, it's like a safe container in which you can try out new things in your nervous system, new ideas. You can look at habits in your own psychology or your psyche and kind of pick it apart in a way where, the outside world isn't really impinging on you. And then as that kind of develops, you can take it out into the world, right? So it's if it's not showing up in your real life yet, it might just be because there's more cushion time to be done or more like introspection time or something but then also there's people who want to learn kind of, in the midst of it in life, and it just looks a little bit different. So to me, that's not so much of a problem. It's just kind of like a keep at it. It'll happen. But the other part about the apps, I'm developing I don't know if it's top secret anymore, sort of half top secret, something with the Happier app. But a big part of what we're working on is, a lot of people, like you said, have been doing the apps for a long time, and especially kind of in the general Western mindfulness, and there's this general feeling for a lot of practitioners of like, and Andrew Holacek wrote a book about this, or literally called this, I'm mindful, now what? So I think there can be this thing where people are trying out, people are mindful at this point. We've been doing mindfulness for 20 years or something, in the West. And there's a general sense of like, now what? Like, is there a path for me? Where do I go? How do I string this together and make it make sense for me, in the way that a kind of a framework or I don't know, a goal, where is this going? And so there's definitely a lot of things in the works, and I see it in different spheres, but that's something that we're working on, is kind of like helping people to pathify their journey through different styles of practice, even different teachers of practice and stuff like that. Um, so that it starts to have this deeper level of meaning of not just being mindful, but mindful about what and for what, and who's the one being mindful in the first place, getting at these deeper structures, which you can only do by kind of a sense of path. Yeah, that a lot of the apps don't really do. Jeff, what else do you think?
I have so many thoughts about this. I mean, okay, the first thing to say is what is this all in the service of? There are so many different kinds of practices you can do that cultivate different things, but a deep transformative mindfulness practice, a spiritual, whatever it is, the spiritual aspect of it, but also just the straight up functional part of it, is you're building capacity to be okay in ever more kinds of conditions. That's what you're doing. You're, so that you don't have to close off parts of life. You can stay right there in the center and be available to it. And so there's a practice is, in this deep sense, is about cultivating that. And it's about, you have to just continually, repeatedly do it. It's just it's a continuous effort that grows over time that begins to yield ever more dividends. And it's subtle at first. And because it's subtle at first, people like the idea of it, and they start into it, but they're not getting the immediate feedback of the big special effects they might get if they were doing, I don't know, a psychedelic ceremony or whatever. It's a slow build. And so you're looking for the right kind of motivation at the beginning to kind of keep you going until you begin to taste the feedback loop of that, oh, there is something here. And I notice when I'm not doing my 10 minutes a day, that I actually feel more unmoored, or I'm more reactive, or I'm just not as good a parent, or whatever it is. And so I feel like the apps are terrific in the sense that they're a good cultural thing that happened. They took the technology and they're like, hey, we're already on our phones. Why not also introduce meditation? And so there are many, many people who get a ton out of using those apps. And I talk to them all the time. I've got something like over 1,000 notes that people have sent me about descriptions of how doing 10 minutes a day has supported them and changed them. So, however, because it's on your phone, because it's part of the whole suite of enticements that our culture is using to improve everything from your, waistline to your budgeting to your this, that, and the other, and the gamification of it all, there's lots of ways to kind of get into it in a more with the similar approach that's kind of mindless. So, and that's some of what you're describing, the cul-de-sacs every human being does. But as long as you're, with a decent teacher, and you're listening to lessons and you're doing the practice, even at 10 minutes a day, you will start to kind of notice that change. But some people might need a little bit longer than 10 minutes a day. You might need 15 or 20 minutes. I don't know. You have different circumstances. And then what Tasha said, it's always true that applying it in life is going to be more challenging than applying it in a container where you've got 50 minutes, you're hiding in your office, or you're in a quiet room where there's no relatively little stimulation, or you're on a retreat. Like, those are more optimum conditions. The gym equivalent, right? You're in the gym, but you're not in the gym so that you can get better at being in the gym. You're in the gym so you can then go out into the world and have this, like, more fitness, more strength, more cardiovascular health, so you can engage with your life more. And it's the same thing. So that's the value of a protected practice like that. But I would just say, be alert to, I mean, where practice starts to accelerate is when you begin to get curious about, well, I felt this way when I was doing this 10-minute practice. I felt a little more present, a little more settled. What is that like? You kind of notice what's happening in my body when that's going on. And then as you're going out in your life, you're like, oh, interesting. Can I just find that here? And you look for ever greater challenges to be able to tap that into. And there'll always be a point when the challenges are too intense and it's all gone to hell. And it's just how it goes. And then that waveform comes down and you can find it again. But you begin to, that's where you feel into it. Work. How can I find this thing? How can I grow this? And that's
Mhm.
a lifelong process. And friend, there's just no getting around this. You're here as a human being in this life. You're either going to get slammed and run over, or you're going to have to begin to implement some kind of practice so that you could meet life challenges with more dignity and, like, presence. And it practices what's gonna do it for you. And either it's an implicit practice that you're already doing, or you have to begin to make it more explicit. I mean, I feel like it's non-negotiable because life will throw you hardball after hardball.
And something else I want to that I'm always trying to introduce people to, or kind of sensitize people to, is that there's so many different types of meditation, like literally thousands, right? And if your exposure to meditation has been through an app, that's a great on-ramp. Chances are you've encountered like two kinds of meditation. Well, something very somatic, like kind of a somatic mindfulness, or like a breath mindfulness, but there's like inquiry practice, there's sound practice and mantra, and there's like, oh my God, there's dream practice, and there's like vipassana and shamatha, and like all these different
Movement practice,
words, movement
energy
practice. And
practice.
yeah, and that's, I'm talking about literally just practices that you could do on the cushion, not to even talking about out into the world and, service practices and partnered practices and whatever. And so sometimes, like I'll have someone say to me, "Oh, I tried meditation, it didn't work for me." That's like that's like saying I tried books and they didn't work for me. It's like pick up a different book. Like maybe that wasn't your genre or your writing or your
I tried
style
moving.
of writing.
I
Yeah,
tried moving.
try moving.
Not
They
for
didn't
me.
Yeah, no.
like it. Gonna stay here. And so for people, for example, like you said, who find themselves falling asleep, that maybe it's the wrong voice for you or the wrong style or the wrong kind of it's too long or you're meditating at the wrong time of day or something. Like when someone comes to me and asks what, they've sampled a different couple different kinds of practices and they're like, what should I be doing? I'm like, which one brings you alive? Like which one makes you excited? That's what you should be doing. The one that's going to get you excited. There's nothing special about any particular one. They're there for different people and different nervous systems. So be aware that there's an entire massive spectrum that you're missing out on if you're on the mainstream meditation apps. That's not bad, but if they're not working for you, there are zillions. There's zillions out
Well,
there,
that's
right?
why we started the podcast. That our
Yeah.
Mind Body Adventure Pod was like, let's take these for a spin. So we'll go and try out different practices and with our listeners and be like, oh, that was interesting. What worked about that, or what was weird about that, and from all these different places, because it's just like there's so many. But you don't have to be oppressed by that. You can approach it as like they're just different rides. They're different
Mhm.
ways to engage creatively with reality, and there's so much more suppleness and possibility out there than most of us realize. So to come and try it with friends, that's the way you're going to find the thing that works for you. I mean, it's something that most of us figure out our own anyway to some degree.
I think also there's a lot of pressure to be doing it a certain way or
Yeah.
be like, "Oh, it doesn't count unless I, like, did an app or something like that."
Yeah.
Like, for example, you can practice it all the time. Like, I feel like if like, meditation is the practice of mindfulness, right? Is that a good way to define
Mindfulness is a component of
other
meditation.
way? Okay.
Mindfulness is like the
Yeah.
being aware, being present, and then there's what you do with that awareness and presence.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. Like, for example, you can choose, I'm gonna try and show up as best I can, to use these practices. So like when I'm recording a podcast, I'm the voice is the anchor. I'm listening to you. But if my mind starts wandering, it's like, oh, there, come back to the voice. Come back to the voice, like picking the anchor. Or like
Yeah.
if I'm with my kids and like, oh, there's the urge to pick up my phone, come back to the kid. Or is there urge to come back to the kid? Or like,
Mm.
oh, it's so loud, everybody's like screaming and it's insane. And it's like, oh, come back to my body. I feel like where the tension is building, there's tension there. Tension.
Yeah.
Like, just that's an example of how you can just keep practicing it without, you need the formal practices, but, like, you can do it all day long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Definitely.
then there's so many different things. Like so what you're describing, this like kind of returning to what you've decided is like the anchor or like Jeff likes to call it the home base, right? And then there's what you do when you're at the home base. So there's a certain style of meditation is okay, my practice is to return and to let my awareness stay on that thing, like I'm going to stay here and look at this, let it rest on whatever, this plant for as long as I can to kind of like train the ability to stay with something, right? Which is really great for people who are, it's a great practice for people learning to focus harder, or like, I don't know, like sports things, kind of like that honing in of the mind, just like you're making like a laser like mind. But then there's also, okay, so I'm bringing my mindfulness back to this, my chosen object. And you can do insight and kind of inquiry meditations there. What is this thing made of? Like, how in what way am I, placing my narrative on top of it? What is really there? Did I feel about it yesterday the way I feel about it today? And so then you're getting into kind of inquiry into the nature of your relationship to things and people and the environment, right? Which is a totally different skill to build, right? And yeah, those are
Yeah.
just two
I
of a
like it as
zillion.
I like it framing it as skills. I think that's the way to like what you describe as the skill of coming back is a skill of concentration. You're building up like to choose to notice, like to choose where you want to put your attention first, and then to actually stay there, and then you come back. But there is another skill of clarity, which Tasha was just speaking to, which is like, well, what is actually happening in my experience? Like, can I get clear about the thing I'm paying attention to, but also can I get clear about what I'm bringing to it and what's getting in the way? And then there's like the skill of equanimity, which to me is like so paradoxical and awesome. And it's the skill of like you're bringing your attention, say, to your breath or to your sport, and you could think of it as like one. If you hadn't thought about it, you think, oh, it's almost like I'm directing my attention out. Equanimity is more like I'm going to stay here, but I'm going to be in this totally receptive place. So I'm going to learn from my experience. I'm going to let it flow backwards through me. It's kind of sounds weird, but it's like it's presence and being present and being humble enough to 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 receive the teaching of whatever the moment is. And so you need concentration, you need clarity, you need equanimity, but you can find them in different ways, and different practices cultivate them to different degrees. But you could say a good mindfulness or meditation practice kind of does all of them. And then you can take that into your life and just, I think of it as like dials. Like I now know how to immediately find the concentration dial. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm paying attention to my worries. I'm going to pay attention to this instead, like you said, my kid. And like I'm gonna use the clarity. What's actually going on here? Why am I having a hard time? Why am I so angry? Oh, there's some grief here. There's some this and some expectation of how I wanted things to go. Okay, well, what happens if I kind of use equanimity, kind of let go of that a little bit and see who's actually in front of me? What does this kid really need? What does this situation really need? Can I be receptive enough to begin to get the learning? Those are all of that, which everybody will recognize as the things you do as being human. Those are the things that are getting explicitly trained among others in a practice that you then learn how to begin to get ever more deliberate about applying in life.
I love that you framed those 3 skills in that way. Just we talked about path earlier. It's like this is a path and how to
Mhm.
direct those skills.
Yeah, and actually, in any practice of meditation in a traditional sense, there's what you do on the cushion, but then there's also just kind of like intellectual learning about it, right? Which feeds back into it, like drives your why am I doing this in the first place? So even just like Jeff explaining that gives a new kind of like it makes you feel a little bit more motivated to try out a meditation. You're like, "Oh, I understand what it's trying to work on for me," right? And without that kind of like intellectual buy-in, it feels like we're just doing it because we're supposed to, because it's the hot thing right now and everyone on TikTok
Totally.
is doing it, right? So it's also
Yeah,
this balance between, feeding your intellect and understanding your why and having that actually deeply land for you and then going and do the practice, right? It's like both. It's like you go to the gym because you know what it's doing and why, and you choose specific workouts to hone in on a specific muscle pattern or something like that, right? So it's not just like showing up because you think you should. Although plenty of us are showing up just because we think we should. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, something you sort of touched on is like you said the intellectualizing and something I've been working on is like being able to sit with my feelings without analyzing them. I struggle with it in my writing. I struggle with it like in therapy. It's like, no, 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 no. Like go back to your body. Like don't start thinking about it. Like stay in it longer.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about that in terms of even like a mindfulness practice is like even noticing like, oh my gosh, I've started asking like the clarity piece. If you start asking too many questions, how do you not get into this over intellectualizing it and still stay with it where you're gaining clarity instead of just escaping almost by wondering?
Jeff, you
that
want to
is a
hit it or should
problem.
I? That's
Sure.
a
I
problem.
mean, that is a problem. That happens all the time. It's you don't even know the ways you're getting bound up in your feelings often. You think you're just letting yourself feel them because you hear that's what you're supposed to do, but really you're in like a struggle with it. You kind of don't want to have it. You're a little bit ashamed of it. You need to know the answer to it. You're grabbing it. It's like so you're creating all this friction that comes between it. And when you understand the core of how healing works emotionally, how it works is you bring your attention, your full awareness, and you let something come into your experience. Whether you do this alone on a cushion or you do it with a therapist, you do it with a friend, whatever it is, like an awareness in that sense acts like a kind of solvent. When you fully allow with the full, I like this quote, the full expression of an emotion is also its funeral pyre. Like if you can really let it like say what it wants to say, you feel the full arc of it, then it will shift into something else. And then this is, you know, a, a subtle science because there are long, deep patterns, or you're not going to like get rid of something, but it's more like you give it the permission to begin to change into what it wants to change. But in the meantime, the learning is all the ways you're getting in the way of that, and everyone's going to get in the way of it in some way. So it's just a process. I mean, that's my gloss on it. But what about you, Tasha?
Yeah, I think there's a like something that practice does is it like hones in on like the subtlety of attention. So you start to get really subtle about what your attention and your intellect is actually doing, right? Because there's the
Yeah.
level of awareness and intellectualization in which there's a story in my mind and I am believing that story, right? And I'm engaging in it, right? So I'm kind of like explaining why I feel a certain way, why I'm angry, and kind of tracing it back to childhood, and I'm doing all this stuff. But there's kind of like I'm married to it, right? It's like a roller coaster I'm bound to and I have no choice with. And then there's like this subtle detachment or like
Right.
space. It's like space around that story where it's not that I'm shutting down that story and saying, don't intellectualize, don't explain it to yourself, but you're just making this like warm, kind of attentive space to listen. You're seeing
Right.
the story play out in your mind, in your body, and kind of in the way that like, a kid might come to you and like start just trauma dumping their day to you, like, and then Billy came and then he hit me on the head and then I punched him and I told him, and as a person listening, you're listening with this compassionate awareness. You're just kind of like there for it. And you hear it and you know that it may be not all of reality, but it's real for this being right now. And we can do that for ourselves, right? And that is kind of this first step of just a little bit of spaciousness around the story. So you're not, fighting it off and saying
Right.
stop is engaging with it one to one. It's actually not making any more space for it. It's just kind of like shutting it down and asking, come back later as some other form, right? But this first step of just kind of making space around it, you can still let the story happen, but just don't believe in it, or like don't let it become your entire attention. Just kind of this warm
Yeah.
attention. I always call it warm attention because it's spacious and kind of compassionate.
It's so beautiful. I mean, that is the solvent, you could say, the having more space, more awareness around it, even the story. Because what happens is the story, the emotion, it starts out as being the whole thing. It's like filled up the full bandwidth of your
Yeah.
experience. You are super identified with it. You have no space around it. You think this is your fate. And as you begin to notice both the feelings and the story around it, you get a little more room, and now that's not like it's not being reinforced as the whole of you. You could say the story and the I say solvent, but you could also say it's like it's being stitched into this broader awareness. The story, the feelings, now they're not in this concentrated block in the center of your experience that you're fully identified with. It's starting to thin out. It's starting to get redistributed to other. You're aware of it in this context now with this person, this therapist. The space of the room is here, the memory of what this is going to be is getting laid down. All of that story is getting stitched out into that, and it's losing its like the center of gravity that made it so all consuming. Another way to another kind of metaphor, yeah,
Makes me
man,
like
being human, friends. What the fuck? What the hell? How did we get
It's
here?
insane, bro.
How do you do this? Nobody gives you the manual. Oh my
so
I don't
good.
god!
know.
And then you become a parent. Then you're like, now I have to deal with their craziness. I can't get away
Ugh.
from it because because I like them,
And it's really loud.
and it's so loud.
Yeah,
I don't
Yeah,
have kids because they're too loud.
they're very
But I
loud.
they're
have
so
I
loud.
have lots of friends with kids so that I can experience their loudness for controlled amounts of time, and then I can
But
go
you
back
don't
home.
even need kids. It's like that's what love is.
Of
Love
course.
is you take on you get more and more connected to your network, your
Yeah.
chosen family, to whatever it is, and then their problems become your problems in a way that and you want that.
Yeah. I
Not to
think
be
for me,
bogged
like
down by it, but to meet it. Yeah.
a big part of the reason why I don't have kids is because I'm like you just decide. Every person kind of decides, or life decides for you, like where that your compassionate energy really wants to flow. And for me,
Yeah.
I'm like, I got like students and community, I got my cats and like all these people who I'm like, I'm so ready to be open hearted for you, and I am. I maybe don't have time for kids, right? But I have a lot of
But
respect
you
for
do
everyone
have
else who
time for
does.
me, and
I
I'm
do
a
have time for
giant
you.
baby.
Jeff's my baby.
Ah! It actually is this tone of some of my text messages that my kids are killing me. Help
I need a
me.
Band-Aid.
I need a band-aid. Yeah.
Oh, this was awesome. There's so much we didn't even get to talk about. I really wanted to cover like ADHD and mindfulness and meditation practices, and maybe that'll be another day. You guys are up to so many things. Why don't you tell
Oh my
us?
God.
Just start rattling them off, because I know people are like, I want more of this. Where can I find it?
Well, first of all, we have a podcast, the Mind Bot Adventure Pod, which, because Jeff is in BC right now, but he's coming back this summer, so we're gonna record a whole bunch of new episodes and put them out. So that's mindbotpod.com. And then we both have our own Substacks where we, publish and send out goodies every week, like guided meditations and group sits and community. We both have like different communities that we do monthly and weekly and whatever. Mine is called Bodhi Savage. So it's like Bodhi, BODHI, savage.com. Jeff?
Perfect name. Yeah, you got to check out Tasha's stuff, because Tasha's guided meditations are like incredibly powerful. I have Home Base with Jeff, tons of free guided meditations there, and I do weekly community sits with people it's on my website on the Home Base, and then of course I'm on the apps. I'm on Calm and Happier, and I don't know, lots of them. And I do retreats and in-person stuff where we can kind of take these things for a ride, from shorter 2-day things to slightly longer ones. And Tasha and I are in discussion about hopefully doing taking some folks to Bhutan. So it would be a really awesome kind of like rare opportunity to visit that country, which has all these stipulations around visas. It's quite expensive, and we're trying to figure out how that all works. But to actually practice in kind of the ancestral home of some of these techniques, in particular, that Tasha's really connected to through her lineage. So that if you're interested in that, you just stay tuned through our websites, and it could be super fun too.
Oh my gosh, well, this
Yeah.
is awesome. Thank you so much for making the time to entertain my questions and to enlighten our guests.
Of
Thanks so
course,
much for having
great to
us.
hang out with you, Sonia.